Hello everyone and welcome to SplitSecond. This week we are showcasing Strixhaven again and Commander 2021 as well. And as a special guest, we are joined by Demented Kirby from the Commander Tavern. If you don't know his channel yet, you should check it out. It's full of spicy deck techs to satiate all your needs. For this pod, he brewed an interesting list around Esix Fractal Bloom. You will be able to check a deck tech video for it on his channel. You can find the links in the description below. The vid is on a combo list for Dina Soul Steeper, Baal is piloting his take on Velomachus Lorehold, Leite is on a stormy brew for Veyran Voice of Duality, and lastly, Demented Kirby brought his extra spicy midrange Esix Fractal Bloom. Baal won the die roll and mulliganed once. He kept 2 lands, a plains and a command tower. Talisman of Conviction is his only ramp, and Scroll Rack can help on putting some cards on the top of his library to cast with his commander. Silence is good protection, while Unexpected Absent is versatile removal. Smothering Tithe might just be what he needs to faster bring Velomachus to work. Leite had to mulligan down to 6, and he kept an island and a training center for lands. Sol Ring is his only ramp, and Ponder is a great cantrip. Aria of Flame can be better exploited with Veyran, and as a last resort he can fire Windfall to refuel. He sends 1 island to the bottom. Demented Kirby mulliganed once and kept a versatile hand with his Snow Forest, City of Brass and Scalding Tarn for lands. Counterspell and Mana Drain serve mostly to protect his hopefully increasing board presence as well as stop faster decks. Icefang Quattle is versatile card draw that can deal with pesky attackers like Timnus or Nihilus, and Tireless Tracker is a constant token generator to be abused with Esix. Note that Demented Kirby's Snowlands didn't arrive in the mail in time for recording, so for gameplay purposes all his basics will count as snow-covered ones. Last but not least, the vid also mulliganed once and kept 2 lands, Polluted Delta and Undergrowth Stadium. Carpet of Flowers will be good versus 2 blue opponents, and Crop Rotation can also fetch some ramped up lands, like a Cradle for instance. Entomb is a good tutor paired with Yawgmoth's Will, and Tainted Pact is more of an all-in tutor in this deck packed with spicy combos. Let's see how this unfolds. Baal starts his turn with a command tower and passes. Leite plays a training center and casts Sol Ring. Our second feline guest in the show checks if things are good, and it's Demented Kirby's turn. He simply plays a Scalding Tarn and passes. The vid also plays a fetch, a Polluted Delta, and passes without casting Carpet, so his opponents don't play around it. Baal top decks an Ancient Tomb that he plays, and casts Talisman of Conviction. He follows it with Scroll Rack before passing. Later plays an island and casts his commander, Veyran Voice of Duality. In his end step, Demented Kirby cracks his fetch for a Rimewood Falls. On his turn, he plays a Mana Confluence and passes, holding those 2 counterspells in hand. The vid cracks his fetch in the end step for an Overgrown Tomb. He goes to his turn and plays an Undergrowth Stadium. He casts Carpet of Flowers and passes. Baal plays a Plains and ponders, firing Silence just to make sure he can resolve his Smothering Tithe, but he actually drew a combo piece, so he would rather save it for later. As expected, Demented Kirby fires a Mana Drain, which is the worst counter the table could expect for that. Baal passes and Leite starts his turn with a newcomer, Aria of Flame. It enters and each opponent gains 10 life, which worsens Velomachus' beatdown plan. Leite then casts Ponder, triggering Aria of Flame twice due to Veyran Voice of Duality. The first ping hits the vid, and so does the second. Magecraft also triggers and Veyran is pumped to a 3-3. He draws and plays a mountain, and swings Veyran at the vid, putting that pressure on the life points he just gave him. Since the vid is playing black, ad nauseam is a concern for the table. He passes, and on Kirby's turn he plays a City of Brass, and gets 4 generic mana from Mana Drain, with which he casts his commander Esix Fractal Bloom, before shipping it back to the vid. He gets 1 green from his Carpet and plays a Bayou. He casts his commander Dina Soul Steeper, and then follows it with a Lotus Petal. After some pondering, he passes the turn. Baal fails to draw another land, so he activates Scroll Rack for 2. He then ships those 2 with a Stoneforge Mystic. He finds and casts a Sword of the Animist to try to finally get those lands. However, as Leite gets to his turn, he casts a Thieving Skydiver, kicked for 2, and steals Baal's hard work just like that. He then casts a Chrome Mox, imprinting a Pass in Flames, which surprises the table. He then equips the sword onto Veyran and goes to combat. He attacks the vid for 3 and the sword triggers, getting him a basic island. He then passes. Kirby ponders for a bit on his Tireless Tracker, but would rather play safe, so he plays a Snow Forest and casts a Gilded Goose to have mana for his counterspell up. Goose enters, and instead of creating a food token, he chooses to create another Gilded Goose token, which in turn creates its food token. Now with 2 geese, all he needs is a porch.
That's what I thought a Portuguese was!
He then goes to combat and attacks the vid before passing. David adds 2 orange mana from Carpet, plays a Nurturing Peatland and casts a Green Sun Zenith for 3 to hide his real intentions. The table talks about a Reclamation Sage or Eternal Witness, but he surprises us with a Witherbloom Apprentice, and Zenith is shuffled. We're all afraid of him having a Veil to protect Shane and Apprentice, but as David is counting his mana, it seems otherwise. He then casts Crop Rotation, sacrificing his Peatland, and gets an Ancient Tomb, so he doesn't lose mana in case his creatures vanish. He then casts an aggressive Tainted Pact, triggering both Dina and Apprentice, making his opponents lose 2 and gaining 1 life. He goes on to exile more than half of his deck, looking for 1 of 2 cards, and losing access to some notable cards like Necropotence, Ad Nauseam, Protean Hulk, and several tutors, stopping at a Demonic Tutor, so he doesn't lose any more of his deck and being able to get the desired card, either Shane of Smog or Veil of Summer, to go for a secure win. He passes without casting the tutor to deter people from willing him now, which would provide him more cards and maybe the ones he needs, as well as not losing the tutored card in case they indeed will, as a way to disrupt him. Baal fails to draw yet another land, so he casts an Imperial Recruiter and tutors for a Dockside Extortionist, which he casts. And despite giving him 7 treasures, Kirby actually wants to copy that, so he lets it resolve. Baal then casts a Combat Celebrant to get ready for those extra combat steps with Velomachus. He passes to Leite, which actually fires his Windfall, triggering Magecraft. He doesn't have much stuff else to do, and can potentially kill a player with Arya if he pulls those cantrips. Arya triggers twice, pinging David both times. However, Kirby does have some good cards he doesn't want to lose, so he fires his counterspell. Leite then casts Ral, Storm Conduit and attacks David for 6, getting a mountain with a sword, and upticks Ral before passing. Kirby gets to his turn and casts Fungal Sprouting, which, because of Esix, instead of creating 4 Suprolings, he creates 4 Dockside Extortionists. In response to those triggers, Baal sacrifices 3 treasures and casts Village Bell Ringer, which resolves. Kirby gets 36 treasures, still not a record in our channel, but enough for an Eternal Witness to be able to return mana drain to his hand. He then attacks David with Esix and passes. David nets 2 black from Carpet and casts Demonic Tutor, triggering Dina and Apprentice, dealing 2 to each opponent and gaining 1 life. He tutors for the desired Veil of Summer, and then casts Culling Ritual, triggering Dina and the Apprentice again. Baal cracks his treasure for white, Leite passes priority, and Kirby flashes in Ice Fang Quattle, drawing him a card. The table then discusses for a bit if this should be countered or if it is a bait so that David casts Chain of Smog unimpeded. Kirby cracks his treasures floating equal amounts of blue and green mana, and then creates a food token that he eats right up before letting the ritual resolve. David gets 19 black and green mana. He follows this Cataclysm with an Entomb, tutoring for a Chain of Smog. The table is surprised for a bit, just until he casts Yawgmoth's Will. Letting this resolve would mean he would have access to another tutor for protection, and recoup everything he lost, so Kirby decides to cut David's plans short and fires his mana drain now. However, David casts his last card in hand, the Veil of Summer. As all hope seems to be lost, Baal responds with his silence, stopping David from winning once again. He gets to draw from Veil of Summer but has to pass without further possible actions. Baal hopes for a colored land from the top, but he finds the unlucky Gemstone Caverns. He swings with all creatures at Ral, taking him down and passes. Leite plays an island and attacks Baal for 2 before passing. Kirby starts his turn with a Tireless Tracker. He plays a tapped Mystic Sanctuary, creating a clue token that actually comes in as a copy of Imperial Recruiter due to Esix's ability. He tutors for a deranged Hermit, and everyone is bracing for impact. He attacks Baal with Esix and Leite with Witness before passing. David draws and simply casts Dina again, followed by a Llanowar Elves, before passing. His last out is top decking Exquisite Blood and getting 1 creature through. Baal draws and it's another mana-less rock, Mox Opal. He swings Combat Celebrant at Leite, leaving 2 blockers for David just in case. He passes and on Leite's turn he top decks a Preordain, which he casts, triggering Magecraft and Arya twice, pinging Kirby for 5 and then for 6. He bottoms 1 and draws the other. He casts Narset, Parter of Veils. He downticks her and finds a Faithless Looting, which he also casts. Magecraft triggers once and Arya twice, dealing 7 and then 8 to Kirby again. Since the ranged Hermit can give Kirby 4 Combat Celebrants, that might be enough to clean things up. He then attacks David for 4 and he actually jumps with the Elves. He passes to Kirby, who jumps directly to combat, attacking Leite and his Narset, taking her down. He then casts the ranged Hermit, which resolves. The 4 Squirrel tokens come into play as Combat Celebrants due to Esix, since that is for sure his fastest way to deal with Leite and his Arya. Only then he plays his land for the turn, creating a normal clue token from Tracker, and passes. David starts his turn with a Wild Growth onto his Overgrown Tomb. He then casts Melira Sylvok Outcast merely as a blocker, since Masticore was already exiled to Tainted Pact. He passes to Baal, who finally top decks what he needed, a Sun-Baked Canyon. He slams it as well as his last card in hand, a Splinter Twin, enchanting Village Bellringer. This way he is able to create a token copy of Bellringer that will untap all his creatures when it enters the battlefield, allowing him to create infinite Bellringers. For whom will this bell toll? Well, for his opponent's funeral, since they all have haste and will attack for lethal. GG. Thank you for joining us for today's match, everyone. Am I the only one with my ears ringing from all these bells? We'd like to start the credits by thanking our current patrons, and especially Izanagi, Stefan, TJ Rap, Mike Purr, Ajimo, and Crustable, Drunken Housecat, V, RJ, and Heated Chill, our stack breakers. If you want to support us, you can do so by liking this video, subscribing, or by becoming a patron yourself. If you want to go through other Commander adventures, click one of the videos on the right. If you want to talk with us about our games or other EDH related matters, join us on Discord. Join us again next week for a new set of Commanders and more decisive plays. See you all then!